G'day guys, and behind me I have my Ferrocrete tank that I built, and I thought it was about time that I went through how to build it. So I'll go through all the details, the way that I mixed all the concrete, how I laid it all out, and just some of the progress shots that I got through it. I built this one before I started making the videos, so I don't have exact everything for it, but I'll go through how you can make it yourself and everything I did to get it going. And yeah, just go through a couple of things that I learned along the way and try and make it as easy as possible for you guys to learn. So if you want to keep on watching, awesome. So I thought I'd take you for a little bit of a walk around the system and show you how it all works. One thing that I really wanted to have was a waterfall inside of the system. I didn't want to have ugly pipe sitting out and doing everything, so this is what I basically came up with. In the middle of it, there is a pipe, and that is the gravity return from the whole system. Okay guys, so what I have here is the center part of the tank. In here, I have a T-pipe that goes from both sides, so there's little center drains that comes from both sides, and then comes to the middle bit, and then comes up here, and it levels out the height of here. So in this bit here, I have another part that takes into the sump, and it will keep the level inside of the beds pretty much perfect all the time. And this center pipe can also be used as a filter if I need it. So if I get a bit too heavily stocked or something goes wrong in the system and I need to be able to remove the solids, I can do it through this system. At the moment I don't have anything, but it would be very, very easy to turn this one into a radio flow filter. I'll just put a pipe that I've got that sits in there perfectly, put something over the top of it, and it will allow all the solids to still filter to the bottom. So inside the tank, this is a little bit of forward thinking that I did when I built it. This little pipe here is connected to a pump that is under there. So I've got a very small little DC pump that is inside the concrete and put inside of it. And right at the bottom of the tank, there is a whole lot of little bits that can suck it all up. So if I put power to this sucker, it'll pump all the water straight out of that little pipe there and into a bucket. So if I want to pull out all the solids from the bottom of it, if I want to use a filter, then I can do that pretty easily. Or if it starts building up the bottom, I can put a bit of power to it, flick this cable here, flick another one that's a bit further down there, and it'll direct all the water directly into the bed. And now the last part is the sump. So when I built this sump, my main idea about what I wanted for it was something that would be oversized and something that won't run out of water particularly quickly, and something that I don't need to top up particularly quickly. So if you can see there, that is the water return coming from the gravity fed from there. So I've got a long pipe that's hidden behind the walls, it comes out and goes into here. I've got a couple little fish that I leave in there just for a bit of mozzie pulling out, pumps in there, and it goes straight up and straight through the wall and follows through straight under to where the grow beds are. So that's pretty much all that's involved with the sump and the tanks. So I will go through and show you how I built it all and go through all the details, show you how to build, all that sort of stuff. So yeah. So some of you guys might ask, what actually is Ferrocrete? Because before I'd ever heard of the term, I had no idea either. So I thought I'd go through a quick tutorial about what it actually is. So it's 2 parts sand, which is what I got here. I've got a brick sand here, to 1 part cement, and then it's laid in between the actual cement and sand mixture is this stuff, which is basically chicken wire. So together it will create quite a strong bond that can be shaped into pretty much anything you want. So you create the shape with the chicken wire and then sandwich it in between all of the mixture that you make up. It's not particularly hard to make, it's just back-breaking. So the first half of the pond that I did it pretty much just in a wheelbarrow. So every single load that I did, I kept on mixing it all up inside of it, and then I smartened up and got a cement mixer, which made the second half a lot quicker and a lot easier. But it will work inside of a wheelbarrow since I did the first half of it, and I thought I'd show you how I mix a batch of it up, because I've got a couple things that I can use it for inside of the system. So I'll show you how it mixes up, how thick the mixture should be, and that sort of stuff. So one disclaimer I should make is that I'm not an expert at doing any of this. I pretty much learned as I went. And there are probably people that are far better at making it, and there are probably people that know far more than me when they make this sort of stuff. But I'll show you guys how I made it and how I worked through it when I did it. And if you've got any questions, ask me in links or the questions below, and I'll do my best to answer and help you out with any of it. So yeah, keep watching. So like I said, the mixture is 2 parts sand and 1 part cement. So for the mixture I'm going to make up today, I'm going to do about 1 packet. So I've got about 1 of them into my wheelbarrow to half of 1 of them. And one thing I forgot was gloves. One thing to note, when working with sand, when working with cement, you want to be able to wear gloves because your hands will dry out quite horribly. So that just stops all my hands from getting very, very dried and cracked. So I've got about one full bucket there. So I will put half the bucket. And the measurements don't need to be completely exact. If they're out by a bit, it doesn't really matter too much. And that goes straight into there. So when you're adding your water, you want it to get to a consistency that you can actually move it around and work on it with, which is what I'm going to get out of this. So I'll add my water and then mix that up. Okay, so when I put it on there, on the second coat, you want it to be at about this texture. So when I layer it out, I put about 2 or 3 coats on. The first one goes on quite thick, and then the second and third one come out as this sort of a texture. So you want it to be a bit runnier, you want to be able to fill up all the little cracks that pop up like that. But it's a little bit too runny for what I need for it now, so I'm going to add a little bit more. So for the first layer of concrete, that is the sort of texture you want it to be. You want it to be able to hold its own shape and to keep itself sitting up. Because if it's too runny, it'll flop around everywhere. If it's too light, it won't flop around enough. And it won't slop into it. But that's about perfect for what I need. Okay, so granted, this is not the actual pond itself, because I didn't take any videos of me doing it, but I thought I'd show you. So for the actual Ferrocrete, this is the stuff that gives it its strength, or stops it from pulling apart when everything contracts and expands and does its stuff as it's drying. So in theory, the steel is what gives the concrete a lot of its strength. I'm doing this as a little bit of a doorstop for my chickens since the dog seems to want to try and dig through there, so I'm going to put a bit of concrete in the way to do it, and I thought I'd show you guys how it all works and how I would have done it inside of the bed. So I've got my couple of layers in this. I would have put about 3 layers of the steel through it, but it's the base of this, it doesn't need very much. And I would have tied it in little knots to try and keep it as tight as possible. So when you're doing it, you want to keep it as tight as possible as you can get it. And that will give a lot more strength to the actual concrete. So I will continue. So I would lay it down there and I'll do little things to hold it together, and then I would layer it all in. So I'll go on that. Okay, so I have my concrete mixture and I will drop it straight. And it's getting thick already. Okay, so granted that is not the prettiest concreting job that's ever been done, but it's going to get covered with straw and it's going to get covered with crap and everything anyway, so I'm not particularly fussed. And the Ferrocrete does not come out perfectly straight and smooth anyway. Well, it could if you put enough time and effort into it, but when you've got a job that big, it doesn't really happen. So as you can see, all of the concrete has gone between, or the Ferrocrete has gone between the steel in the chicken wire and settled in between it. So it should be able to bond together and create a very, very strong seal around it. But one thing you've got to note is make sure that none of the actual wire is poking up along the top of the wire of the concrete, because you don't want to be able to get in contact with the water, otherwise it's going to rust and the rust will spread through the rest of the steel inside of it and weaken the whole structure. So make sure it's all covered as well as possible with concrete and then go on from there. So after that's done, I would add another layer on top of it, so I'll make a very thin coat of it and then put it all the way over the top of it, and that will create a very, very strong watertight seal between them. Because occasionally when I was doing it, it started cracking a little bit, and I found a second coat over the top worked quite well just to keep everything dry and crack free.
So this is where it all pretty much started. This was the first tank that I built for the system, and just to see if the whole thing would work. It's basically just pond liner and some sleepers that line the edges of it, which was all I really needed for the beginning, but it didn't work very well at the end. So I started off digging, and I started off digging the other side of it first. So I did the second tank, and I kept the first one working while I was doing it. And let me tell you, digging is not a fun job. We have very hard clayish soil around here, and it was pain.
Go on, keep going. Come on, save me some digging. Save me some digging, Daffy.
Same, isn't it? Ah, you suck. Keep digging.
And as cute as he is not very good at digging. He'll take out a little bit, but then it's just me with the shovel, throwing it over the top of my head and getting into it. And here you can see the final depth that I actually got to when I was digging. The good thing about the Ferrocrete is there are no set rules about how wide, deep, and that sort of stuff you go. So here is the underground piping that I used for it, where the center drains all match up. From there I continued on to layering up the wire in the system. So I put the wire around it and got the basic shape that I wanted for the pond itself, and then layered concrete that went all the way around the pipes and embedded the pipes straight into the ground and coated them completely. And then it's just a matter of layering up the concrete around the edges of the pond and building it higher and higher and higher to the height that I wanted to get at. And just continuing, so I put another couple more layers around, sealing it all up, like thinner coats of it. Then I started on the water feature itself. So I laid mesh over the top of it and had a pipe right in the middle that kept it higher, and then concrete over the top of that, quite thick concrete, and put it over the top of it so the water would run down a slope into the fish pond itself. And then it's a matter of filling it up the pond and allowing it to cure. So you want to have it curing for about a month to get the optimum amount of strength out of it. So I filled it up with water and then just let it sit pretty much for a month without touching it, which was boring and too big.
Okay, so after the pond has had about a month to cure and harden with the water and everything inside of it, the next thing you got to do is seal the actual concrete itself, or the Ferrocrete. The concrete itself has a lot of lime inside of it, and when the lime reacts with the water, it's going to send the pH straight through the roof, which is going to cause lots of problems down the road. So you need to seal the walls of this with something. What I used was this stuff. It is a pond sealer, and it works really well. It goes on really thick, and it sets really, really hard. So basically, I painted on 2 layers of it in crisscross ways. So the first one, I did that direction, and the next one, I did that direction. And it goes through and fills up any sort of little cracks that are in the system still, and it sets really hard, and it gives it a nice colour for the actual pond itself, which is what I want.
And this was the very first time that I actually filled it up with the waterfall and the water inside of it. So I've been using the other side at the same time, because I didn't want to pull it all out and stop the other side from working. So when I got to this stage, I could put the returning water straight into here and then start on the other side. And it was a relief, because it took a while to get to this stage. So all the fishies get moved from one side to the other, and then it's time to start on the hole for the other side. So all the pipes that you can see going across it are the existing water pipes that are going from the new tank straight to the beds, because I'm going to concrete straight through them and move it around. And you can see here I'm digging. I made this side a lot deeper than the other side. So the tank that the dog's sitting in there, that's the Sump Tank, and it's got about 6,000 litres all up. And it took a lot to dig it all out. I was feeling dead by the end of it. But perseverance, throwing shovel after shovel load over your head, and I eventually got it all out. This part here was a little bit of a tricky part inside of it, because it's got the water pressure already inside of it. There's no really other way of getting it in there, getting it piped up without stopping the water. So that pipe there is full of the water from the other beds, and I couldn't seal it in place without all the water rushing out there. So I had to be very careful not to knock it or bang it out of place. And that is the sump all wired up. So the size of the sump, like I said, about 6,000 litres all up in there. It's quite deep. It's probably a bit deeper than it actually realises when you look at it. And that is it all concreted up, thankfully. So that's when I've gotten the first few layers of concrete in there. I've got everything in place, and it's pretty much ready for the BQ. So I filled it all up with water like the other side and gave it a month to cure, and then painted on my pond liner to seal up all the concrete and get it ready to go for fish. And that was pretty much it for the construction side.
So for the edges, you can see what I did here. I wanted a nice decorative look around it. I didn't want to have just the plain concrete poking out of it. So what I did here, a very nice person on one of the Aquaponics forum donated me a whole lot of these rocks. They were pulling them out of their garden because they were redoing the whole thing, and I put them to very good use. So thank you for that, and they went all the way around the system, and they look very, very nice here, I think, and they fit in quite well. Okay, so some of you guys might be curious about what I would do differently if I had to do it all again. And there are a couple of things that I would have done differently, since I wasn't particularly experienced when I started it, and I was just having a go, which is basically how I do a lot of things. But the first thing I would have done, which I learned after it, is I would have lined the dirt between the dirt and the actual Ferrocrete with some builder's fabric, or builder's plastic. Because I've heard that once the soil starts contracting and expanding, thing, over time, it can actually crack the concrete. So far, it's been about a year and I haven't had any troubles from it, but I don't know how long that's going to last. Hopefully, it will last forever and I won't have to worry about it, but for $30 worth of builder's plastic to line the entire thing underneath it, then I would not have a problem at all. The second thing would be to hire a mini digger, because I did pretty much kill myself when I was digging this all out. It was about, I think it was about 15 square meters of dirt that I pulled out of this entire thing, and I had to shift it somewhere else. And it almost killed me. We got a very, very hard clay dirt here, which I think I said earlier, but it was heavy, it was hard, and I was throwing it, so I was standing in here and I was trying to throw it into a wheelbarrow that was sitting about there, so I was throwing dirt over my head into a wheelbarrow, and it just was not much fun. So a mini digger, if I did it again, I would come out, I would spend $200 and I would get one of those guys to come out and take all the dirt away with them as well. Because at the moment I've got piles of dirt around the side of the house which I'm never really going to be able to move, and I'm going to need to get a bobcat in to come and take it all away at some stage anyway. And lucky last thing you guys might be curious about is cost. How much it actually costs to build the entire thing. And I will go onto the computer and type it out as I do it and tell you about how much it will cost and how it's going. And how it compares to just pretty much outright buying a plastic tank. But the one thing I can say is it depends on how you view your labour. If I went to work for the amount of time that I did on this and I charged out the labour rates for the weekends, I would have spent an absolute fortune on doing this. But the way I looked at it is when I was doing it, I was saving myself the 2 hours, 10 hours, 1,500 hours that I actually put into this thing was something I didn't have to pay somebody else to do it. And it was weekend work, so I wasn't doing anything particularly much on the weekend anyway, and I love building stuff. So that's my justification for doing it. But I'll go through all the costs in the next bit.
So I went down and wrote down all the basic prices it would cost to build it. So remember, this was about a 17,000, or I think it was about a 15,000 litre tank all up. And for all that, it was about $910. I didn't go into some of the silly mistakes that I made. So when I bought the cement, I didn't buy it from Bunnings. I bought it from Bunnings straight off, which is about double the price. I started buying bags of cement from Bunnings, which was double the price. But I eventually smartened up, went to a landscape supplier, and they had it far cheaper. And I ended up buying bags of concrete off people, the builders and everything, that had them for $5 a bag. And it was far cheaper that way. But I am quite happy with the price here.
Okay, I haven't quite finished on this pond yet. There are still some things that I've got to do when I actually find the time for it. I've got to be able to install the rest of the lids on here because I want it to be kid safe and animal safe. I don't want anybody to be able to pretty much fall in there. And I don't want myself to fall in there if I'm walking past it with something heavy and not paying much attention. So if I've got a lid there, I've got something to fall on top of. I've done one of the lids on the first one, but I haven't done the other two yet. So they're going to be done quite soon, hopefully. And the next bit I'm going to do is rig it all up so it's automated. So I like feeding the fish myself, but I'll build myself a couple of fish feeders so I can actually set that up and walk away on holidays if I need to. And the next bit is going to be one of these guys. So if you have a closer look, that right there is a little flow indicator. So I'll put that up on the top up tap and have that automatically sense how much water is going into the system and upload it onto the internet with an Arduino. But yeah, so it senses how much water is going in there. It might have a little spinny thing inside of it, and that will top it up. If you can have a look, probably about there, you'll be able to see that I've got a float valve inside of the system. And through that, I'm going to hook it up directly to the mains taps through a filter, so it'll top up the beds automatically, which is what I want to get out of it. And then the next bit that I was working on is this guy. So, if you have a look on here, I'm doing a video on this one at the moment, but I have hooked it up, so I've got a little relay there, and then I'll be able to turn this one on automatically, and it will stay on. And I'm going to turn this into a little linear actuator. I know that might sound a little bit confusing, but basically what it does is that will hook onto there, and it will spin this pipe here. It will spin this threaded pipe here, and I'll weld one of the nuts here to a tube, and that will stay stationary. So when this spins, it'll wind it out and then basically push it out and out and out. And that's going to be hooked up to the lids of each of the beds. So when I walk out and I want to feed the fish, I'll press a button and then the lids will automatically come up. I'll press another button and the lids will automatically come down, which is what I want to get out of it. So it'll be safety, the switch will be above where any random kids could actually accidentally touch it. And then I won't have to think about it pretty much at all after that, which is what I like doing when I build something. So guys, thanks for watching. I hope you got something out of that. And if you like watching my videos, I make a fair few of them. So I've got a fair few on my channel now that go through a couple different things that I find useful about it, walk around the system, and if you want to see the new videos that are coming out, click subscribe around there and you should be able to see them all as they come out. So yeah, thanks for watching everybody, and awesome.